So it's totally fine if your cameras are off, but if you are able to participate in the chat, we would love this to be as collaborative as a session as possible. So, if you wouldn't mind sharing, just to get us started, in one word, how you're arriving today.
And Erica, I'm not able to see the chat, so if you could read a few out, it'll help
Yeah.
me.
All right. We have so rushed, overwhelmed, chilled, happy, hungry, eager, inquisitive, very busy. A very like big range of emotion here. Great, surviving, curious. Wow. So yeah, keep feeling free to enter in your words into the chat. I'm just gonna highlight it seems like we're all coming with different things today. So however you're showing up, we're really glad to have you here in whatever space you're in. So Kathleen, could we advance to the next slide?
Yeah.
We're going to do some brief introductions into ourselves, and then we'd actually like to have you introduce yourselves. So, a quick introduction to me. My name is Erica Brentan. I've been in education for over 2 decades now, and I started my career as a New York City public school teacher. I became very steeped in social emotional learning and just really studied it and really practiced it. And so then I became specialized in SEL. I am a consultant now with the School Culture and Climate Initiative, which we'll share with you a little bit about in a moment. And I live in Montclair, New Jersey, with my family. I have 2 kids in middle school and elementary school. So this work really resonates for me both on a personal level and a professional level. Um, and in my free time, which I don't have a ton of, I like to go on long walks and read and spend time with my family. So it's nice to be with you all here today. And I'm going to hand it over to Kathleen.
Hi, everyone. I'm Kathleen McClay. I'm a trainer with the Positive Discipline Association, where I share relational leadership strategies with educators, parents, and caregivers. I'm also a school culture and climate specialist with the School Culture and Climate Initiative, which, as Erica mentioned, you'll be hearing more about in just a moment. My background is in special education. I spent many of my teaching years in early childhood, where I was also a director and owner of a daycare. And I live in Green Village, New Jersey, which not a lot of people know about, but it's a very small town right outside of Morristown. We have one traffic light. And my kids are mostly grown and flown. They're in their mid to late 20s. But when I'm with them and when I'm with my husband, I like to travel, hike, and sit on the beach and read a good book that's not work related.
All right, so we'd love to hear a little bit more about you. You shared how you're showing up, but we'd love to know. Well, you don't actually have to share your name because it will come up in the chat, but if you wouldn't mind sharing your location, and then what is your position or what is your connection to today's topic? So maybe you're a counselor, maybe you're a teacher, um, maybe you're a parent. So we have, let's see, I'm going to check the chat. We have a school counselor, a counselor, so several counselors here, a community advocate, wonderful, welcome. Um, Someone from Michigan, welcome. We're here in New Jersey, and we're happy to see folks from New Jersey and outside of New Jersey. So we have counselor intern, a lot of SACs. Thank you all. I'm going to just hold it open for another 10 to 20 seconds. More school counselors, psychologist, principal. We're having another snow day here in New Jersey. That's true. It's just endless, but I think it's going to get warmer soon. We have someone from California, a couple people from California. Wonderful. And a school social worker. Okay. Thank you so much, everyone. If you haven't already put your location and position in the chat, we'll still be looking. And this is a community, so other folks will also be interested in knowing who you are. So feel free to keep entering that information into the chat, but we're going to move on with our presentation. So, just a little bit more about us is that we are part of the School Culture and Climate Initiative, And we are based at the Center for Human and Social Development at St. Elizabeth University in Morristown, New Jersey. So our initiative is a wonderful place for schools, teachers, principals, administrators. We offer a lot of services. We offer a school assessment and improvement process. That's a 3-year process. We offer monthly school support network meetings. These are free. So if you get on our mailing list, you'll know all about them. They're free professional development workshops, very similar to the one that we're doing today, and bring together a lot of folks from all different positions and all different areas and to have a lot of collegial support and network. We offer customized professional development and SEL coaching, if that's something of interest to you and your school. And then we have the School Climate Assessment Lab. So if you're interested in learning more, you can visit our website, and this presentation will also be emailed to you and will also be available on the SEL 4NJ website. And finally, this is a small part of a bigger series that Kathleen and I run called Building Within. And it's based on the work of Elena Aguilar, if anyone has ever heard of her. We really help schools and teachers and school staff members, administrators to support them in their emotional lives, really helping to support them during times of change, having compassion and gratitude, and building strong, connected classroom and school communities. So, if you're interested in learning more and you like this workshop that Kathleen and I deliver today, just know that we can create a customized version for you and your school, and it is much more comprehensive. This is a bit of a taste of what we do. So, yes, Kathleen, could you advance?
Sure. There you go.
Thank you. So today we are hoping to connect with you to learn and have fun. This is Kathleen and I have done this presentation several times, and we both enjoy it so much. We both learn something new every time we do it. So we're excited to have this journey along with you. We're going to share our framework for well-being, which we'll get to in a couple of slides, and we'll explore and develop some 2026 survival strategies, which I think we could all benefit from at this time. We have something really nice for you. It's called a Padlet, and Kathleen's going to show you that in a minute because this is something where all of the handouts and the resources and contact info will be available for you after this presentation is over. So you can copy this QR code, and we're also going to put a link in the chat. And Kathleen, I know you said your chat is not working. So Kathleen's just going to show you real quick, and I'm going to put the link in the chat. Um,
Perfect.
so this has all of our handouts, all of our videos that we're going to use, and more. And again, you can access this anytime after this presentation is over. We'll also put the presentation in the Padlet.
Yeah. We also encourage you to turnkey this information, share it with students, share it with other staff members. We've got all of the resources here to turn and use this as quickly as you need to. Couple things, some of the handouts that we're going to be talking about today. One of the list of core emotions, and then Erica has some handouts below that. They're there if you need quick access to them while we're speaking today. Okay, now where were we? Okay.
Okay. So, quick poll. We've heard a lot of information about where you guys are in terms of how you're showing up today, but we're also curious, how is your energy level right now? Are you running on fumes and feeling really depleted? Are you trying your best, but actually quite stressed? Are you energized and ready for anything? Or are you optimistic and hopeful? And we've had folks actually put more than one number in the chat. So we'd love to, just kind of know how you're showing up. Today we have someone who's 2.5, which is kind of a funny, wow, a couple of 2.5s. I've never seen that before. That's so interesting. Thank you for being so creative with that. Four, two, 2 and 4. So quite a few twos, some threes, some fours. So kind of running a couple of ones. Someone has the stomach flu. I'm so sorry to hear that. And I hope
Mm.
you feel better. Um, Threes, twos, and okay. All right. So, however you are coming today, we are ready for you. And we hope that this will be a time and a space for you to, if you're on a one, if you're on a two, to kind of feel more energized and feel a little bit more relaxed.
Yeah. It really helps us to read the room that way. And if you're a one or a two, I think today will be very helpful to you. If you're a three or four, you'll be getting some strategies that will help to buffer against future one and two feelings.
All
So,
right.
we're
Hand it
going to
to you,
jump right
Kathleen.
in by talking about, sure, the helper's paradox. You may be familiar with the way this feels. The helper's paradox means the more energy we devote to helping others, the less energy we have for ourselves. And knowing that many of you are in the role of taking care of others, guiding, teaching others, counseling others, we know that you have probably experienced this feeling of the helper's paradox firsthand. We're just doing for others, taking care of others is just baked into who we are as people in the field of education. But sometimes that can lead to what we experience as stress, right? I love this definition of stress and share it a lot. That is the difference between the way things are and the way we think they should be is stress, causes stress. And the greater that difference, the more stress we experience. So just give me a high five in the chat, like just give me a number five if this you can relate to this definition of stress. This makes sense to you. The difference between the way things are and the way we think they should be. How's it looking there,
Seeing a
Erica?
lot of fives, Kathleen.
A lot of fives. All right, I hear you on that. Okay, so I'm going to start us out today with a personal example of my own, and we're going to tie that to our 4 R's framework for well-being and some other pieces that'll bring us forward through this entire presentation. So, I like to share this story, and it happened just recently, of the way I experienced the difference between the way things are and the way that I thought they should be. My adult daughter travels quite a bit, and usually before her trips, she asks me to help her pack. Now, she doesn't really need my help packing, but it is a nice time for us to just touch base. I get to hear about what her plans are. I get to sort of help her make sure she's got everything she needs. And it helps her to sort of settle for the trip, but it helps me as well because I'm getting all of this information and I can visually see that she's ready. So recently, we were getting very close to a departure date, and we usually do that meeting like a week in advance of the trip. And I wasn't seeing the suitcases coming out. I wasn't hearing anything about taking some time to meet up and do this. And I started to get stressed. And I started to feel like she should be preparing more, and she is way behind, right? Because we were getting up to the last couple of days. So I was really feeling the difference between the way things are and the way I think they should be. So I want you to take a moment and think for yourselves a situation where you felt that difference and when it created some stress for you. I'm going to give you a minute to think of something and keep that in mind as we move forward because we're going to be revisiting your situation as well. So, this is where the 4 R's of well-being framework ties in. Erica and I created this well-being framework as a way to help people not only in the moment when they're feeling that stress, but to buffer against future stress situations and help them to have strategies to get through stress in a way that's really more helpful to them than hurtful. So when we look at the 4 R's, they are reality, regulate, replenish, and reflect. So 1 and 2, reality and regulate. Reality is when we notice what's happening internally when we're stressed, like the feelings that come up for us or the physical sensations. And regulate is our ability to calm the body in the moment. So I really want to focus on that. These are like in the moment strategies. So that's 1 and 2. Those are happening in the moment. But 3 and 4, what Erica's going to share with you in a bit, are replenish and reflect. Replenishing is restoring our energy and pleasure in small, doable ways. And reflecting is using our awareness and our boundaries to build strategies and resilience that are sustainable in the future. So, well into 2026 and beyond. Okay. So, in order to really start exploring this, I find it helpful to start by looking at the cycles of emotion. So, this is the cycle of an emotion. Now, we all experience this when we have an emotion or a feeling, and it starts like this. We have a prompting event, which is something that triggers us, right? We interpret that event, like we put our own context onto it. Then we have a physical response. Something happens in our body, and that can be either comfortable or uncomfortable, but we definitely know that there's been a change. We feel something in our body. That leads us to an urge to act, like what we want to do. And then we go through, follow through with our action, what we actually do. Now, as we know, all actions have a consequence, right? Something will happen in response to that action. So sometimes that action leads to something that we're happy with and we feel comfortable with and good about, and sometimes not so much. So I'm going to go back to my story about my daughter and put us through or take us through the cycles of emotions that came up when she came to me the night before she was supposed to leave on an early morning departure and said to me, "I'm so stressed and I need to pack. Can you help me?" That was the triggering event for me, right? I was just, oh my gosh, I was busy that night. Her stress was creating stress in me. And my interpretation from that was, you're not really being responsible here, and you're not being respectful of me or my time. And you're not being aware of how your stress is going to now cause stress for me. The physical response that I felt was, I carry all my stress in here. So I'm sure my shoulders went up. I'm sure my face reflected the way I was feeling. But I know I had like in the pit of my stomach, that stress feeling. The urge to act that I had was to start lecturing her and telling her, you should have been ready earlier. You're not thinking about my time frame. This is kind of irresponsible. And the action that I actually took was I did that. And I did it kind of loudly. So a little bit of an explosion, like, what are you doing? You know better than this, and blah, 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 blah. And you're stressing me out. And the after effect was that we both went to bed angry. And the next morning, when it was time to go for our flight, it wasn't like the cheerful send off, feeling grounded like we normally have. So it didn't feel so good. I'd like you to now revisit that stress, that feeling that you have between the difference between the way things are and the way you think they should be, and find yourself, see how this played out for you on this cycle of emotions. Just take a moment to look at it and walk yourself through it with your example. So why don't you let us know how it went for you? If it was a positive experience in the end, give us a 1. If it was something that you wish you could go back and have done differently, give us a 2. What do we see in there, Erica?
A mix,
A
actually.
mix.
Yeah,
Okay.
a mix of ones and twos. So,
Okay. Well, I'll tell you, I was definitely a 2. I was wishing I could have gone back and regulated a bit and walked through that a little differently. So we're going to continue to talk about this and talk about the power of the space. And that's what I wish I could have found in the moment. Between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom. There is a moment in that emotional cycle where we can stop for a millisecond or a second, pause and choose a different route. It's not easy to always find, but it's there. I like to think that the 4 R's of well-being line up with that moment, the reality and the regulate. We're going to start with looking at reality, and that is the awareness, oops, of our triggers and our emotions. So that's actually pretty easy for me. I know what triggered me. Like just the whole late thing, the showing up, that really triggered me. Um, but the regulate is in the moment strategies that we can use to help us to calm, take a breath, regulate our brains, and get ourselves into a place that we can think forward and do better so that we can feel better with what we've done in the end. Okay. One of the best ways, I just want to say too that one of the best ways we can do this is to look at our emotions. How am I feeling? Now, emotions aren't good or bad. They're really information from our bodies. So that physical response that we have can give us a clue to what's happening inside of us. And when we can check in with our emotions, it can get us deeper into that. So they're not good or bad. They're always below the surface. And Erica and I like to use Lena Aguilar's 8 core emotions to help us to start digging into this because when we start digging in, it can be really eye-opening what's happening beneath the surface. So on the surface, we may feel shame, sadness, fear, anger, jealousy, happiness, love, or disgust. But when we dig in, we might find that there are more feelings underneath that emotion. In fact, I would argue that there always are more feelings below that emotion. So I'm going to take a minute to share with you Elena Aguilar's. Can you see that okay, Erica?
Yep, that looks good.
Okay. So you'll be receiving this. It's on your Padlet. You can even look at it right now if you want. This is the list of the 8 core emotions with some of the feelings associated with those core emotions beneath it. So when I dig into that experience with my daughter, the first thing that I felt was anger. For sure, anger came up. But when I really dug into it, I realized I was cranky because I was already overtired, overstressed myself, and I was cranky. So I wasn't really in a place where I was going to feel ready for my best response anyway. I was also frustrated. We have a way of doing this. We're not doing it the way we normally do. And this is frustrating for me. I was also a little bit indignant. Like, how could you do this? You're not really respecting my time and space here, and you're causing stress for me. And then when I really drilled in, I realized I was feeling sadness. I was disappointed because we didn't get to spend that time together and we didn't get to connect in the way that really feels good before she goes off on a trip. So take a moment now to dig into your own emotions in that cycle that we were just talking about and try to identify what might have been below those emotions for you.
And Kathleen, I put the link to the Padlet in the chat again. So if folks need to access the core emotions sheet that you just pulled up, it's just fresh in the chat.
Perfect. Thank you. Okay. So one thing that Elena Aguilar tells us is that like the emotion of stress, which is something that a lot of people tell us, is always many other emotions below your stress. So just know that we often feel like we're in a state of stress. So hopefully we're able to find some that you can dig into and maybe identify what was really happening deep down inside and what your body was telling you when you were triggered and put into that emotional cycle. But this handout is really, really helpful with students, with others, in helping them to name their emotions. And Dan Siegel, who's an interpersonal neurobiologist, tells us that when we can name them, we're more able to tame them. So it's really helpful. And neuroscience speaks to that as well. Okay, so let's go back to our cycle of emotions. We really focused now on this whole recognizing the emotion and getting into that. But now I want to speak about this physical response and that urge to act. So there's probably always that feeling something comes up for us. You could have a drop in the pit of your stomach. You could have like butterflies, that tension in your shoulders that I mentioned. So we always have a little bit of an indicator of what's going to happen, but or what we're feeling, what's being communicated from our emotions. But how do we get between that space and that urge to act? Well, one way I like to really talk about doing this is talking about our brain. When we understand what's happening in our brain, it helps us to tame our brain as well. And this activity is from Dan Siegel. He has some great books about the brain and development and just understanding emotions in the brain and behavior and age appropriate behavior. He calls this the hand model of the brain, and it's very easy to share with others. You can really simplify it to work if you're working with children. And I'm going to give you a fairly simple version of it today. And please know that I'm not a neuroscience, so it's very, very surface level stuff here. So if you use your hand like this as a model of the brain, this part here would be right behind your eyes. And this, your palm, would be your brain stem. And that's where all your autonomic functions occur, like your breathing, your blood pressure, your pulse, things that were there and working from the day you were born, and you didn't have to think about them. Now, if you fold your thumb over the palm of your hand like this and open your palm, this is the limbic system. Together, the limbic system and the brain stem are responsible for things like your impulses, your fight, fright, or flight response. It's where strong emotions like fear and angry are stored, and it integrates and stores memories. So, this is a very emotional part of our brain. We call these two parts the primitive parts of the brain. Now, if you fold your fingers over like this outside area is the cortex or the thinking part of your brain. This develops from birth, maybe slightly in gestation, but this is like our talking, our fine and gross motor skills, all develop in our cortex. Now, if you put your fingers right here onto your thumb, this part is our prefrontal cortex. And the prefrontal cortex regulates the limbic area, the emotional area, and the brain stem. It's a primary integration center for our brain. It's kind of like a switchboard or a communication center that helps get messages to where they need to go in the brain. The things that this part of our brain does, some of the things are regulate our nervous system, help us to regulate our emotions, regulate interpersonal relationships. They help with intuition, self awareness, and letting go of our fears. So, a lot of important pieces, a lot of important things that this part of our brain does. But what's really important to know is that when we become stressed or overwhelmed with strong emotions and we become flooded, we go into a state of what Dan Siegel refers to as a flipped lid. And that primary integration center of our brain kind of goes offline a little bit, and it's not communicating well with the other parts of the brain. When we are in a flipped lid, we're working from a very emotional part of our brain. This is where we might walk away from a conversation and say, whoa, what was I thinking? What was I feeling? Okay. When we're in flip lid, it's emotional and it's not a place where we should try to communicate or problem solve. And it's not a place where we can learn. In order for us to learn, we have to calm and regulate our brain so that our brain is fully integrated and that we can put that communication center back into action the way it really needs to be. So, important to know that many of us are walking around like this a lot of the days, right? Slightly flip lid. And when we encounter one of those triggers, it's not hard to get to quickly go into the place of flip lid. Many of our students are here a lot of their lives, right? And doesn't take much for them to go here. So how do we get back to that physical response and urge to act and find that small moment that we were talking about from Viktor Frankl? Okay. One way we know of, we've talked about this in schools for quite a few years now, is to find strategies like mindfulness and breathing. And breathing strategies are very, very popular. So we've given you on the Padlet a video for each one of these breathing strategies. Some of them may be familiar to you. I know belly breathing. A lot of people are familiar with Elmo's video with belly breathing. But I like to talk about like just stopping for a second, dropping into our body, noticing what we're feeling, and taking a second or two or three to breathe. Easier said than done, I know. But the more we do this, it's like a muscle. The stronger our brain gets at knowing to do this. Okay. The better we get at it. So you might be familiar with many of these. If you're not, just go to the Padlet and click on the video that's associated with each of them. But I like to share this one by Huberman. I don't remember. Andrew Huberman is his name. He has a great podcast that's very science related and research related. He talks about health and nutrition and physical activity and things on his podcast. And he did one on this breathing technique called the physiological sigh. I had never heard of it before. And I'd like to share it with you. And when we're viewing this, I'd like you to connect it, what you're learning, with that scenario that you had on the emotional cycle, especially those who felt it didn't go so well in the end. So here we go. Can you hear that, Erica?
Yep.
Okay, great.
Billions of people suffer from stress, and there are tools to combat stress that involve things like meditation, breath work, good nutrition, good social connections, and avoiding all bad things in life. And while those are powerful, the problem is they require that people step away from the stress-inducing activity. By contrast, my lab and other laboratories have been very interested in developing tools that allow us to push back on stress, in other words, feel more calm in real time, meaning without having to disengage from the stress-inducing activity. The best way that I am aware to do that is called the physiological sigh. A physiological sigh is a pattern of breathing that involves 2 inhales followed by an extended exhale. Physiological sighs were discovered in the 1930s as a pattern of breathing that people go into spontaneously when they are in claustrophobic environments or in deep sleep when there's a buildup of a gas called carbon dioxide in the bloodstream. Carbon dioxide triggers the impulse to breathe. There are neurons in the brain that know when carbon dioxide levels have gotten too high, and when the levels get too high, they trigger inhale and exhale, or double inhale and exhale. Now, you can do physiological sighs voluntarily anytime you're feeling too stressed and you want to feel more calm. You do it like this. So it's a double inhale, and typically the first inhale is longer than the second, but the second one is still important to do.
Go with me.
And then a very long extended
We're gonna go on a
exhale.
field trip.
Typically
Not now.
both inhales are through the nose and the exhale is through the mouth. That's the most effective way to do the physiological sigh. However, if you can't breathe through your nose or your mouth for whatever reason, do it all through your mouth or all through your nose. The second inhale is really important because your lungs are not just 2 big bags of air. They're 2 big bags of air with lots of little sacs, millions of sacs. And if you were to lay out those sacs, their volume is as big as a tennis court. And that allows both the intake of more oxygen, but also the offload of carbon dioxide. So when you do the double inhale, it reinflates any of these little sacs that have collapsed. And in doing so, it allows you to offload more carbon dioxide. So if you're feeling stressed in any circumstance, inhale twice through the nose and then exhale long through the mouth. If you want, you can repeat it a second or even a third time, but typically just 1 or 2, maybe 3 physiological sighs are sufficient to bring your level of stress and alertness down very fast and allow you to feel more calm.
Okay, so I just stopped sharing and I can see people again. Good to be back with you. So for those who followed along and did the physiological sigh along with Andrew Huberman, give me a high five if it was helpful, or if you think that it's something that you might use. Yeah, you can drop your high five in the chat too if you're not able to. Thank you. If it's something that you're able to use in the moment, I've been using it lately, and it really is quick and easy, and it really does only take one or maybe two of them to help you to feel calmer. So, this is just one of many ways to breathe. Something I really want everyone to know, though, I just learned this recently from a friend who is doing his doctorates in neuroscience. And he said, be aware that not every breathing technique is good for every child. Some children are very uncomfortable with some of these techniques. Doesn't mean another one won't work well for them, but to give them a variety of techniques to try, because and give them the respect of choosing which one works best for them in the moment. He was referring to box breathing in particular, saying that sometimes people feel a little choked up when they do boxed breathing. So having a few strategies for children is really, really helpful and respectful of them. So, getting back to our 4 R's of well-being, we've talked about reality and we've talked about regulate and regulating in the moment. Erica is going to take us through replenishing and reflecting.
Thanks, Kathleen. I always love listening to you and feel like I get so much out of all the information you provide. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, so I am gonna go into the replenish part, which is kind of the fun part to talk about. Um, so what I'd like you to do is I've just put the link in the chat. You could either use that link or you could use this QR code on the screen. And what I want you to do is I want you to share one tiny thing that restores you, even if it's for 30 seconds. So just one tiny thing that restores you, even for 30 seconds. And what I'm going to do in a moment is I'm going to toggle my screen and we're going to look at all of our answers together in something called Slido. Lauren, thank you so much for sharing in the chat. Could you also put that? Because I love that you have a puppy, and I do too, and he replenishes me. Can you put that also in the Slido? I'm going to toggle my screen here and go. Here we go. Very good. Okay, so I think everyone, you could see this, right, Kathleen? Okay. All right, so here's all of our answers if we want to check them out. We have pickleball, time with grandchildren, squeezing. Oh, interesting. Squeezing. I wonder that's just like a physiological technique of releasing stress. That's so interesting. Fresh air, such a lovely one. And we have Lauren's puppy one here, looking at photos. Pets seem to be a big popular one. Music, reading, walking, having a cup of tea. Lovely. Twisting my blanket. That's such an interesting one. I have not heard of that. But that seems like a really nice de-stressor, like a really nice tension reliever. Um,
Sour candy is new to me. That's,
Sour candy, yeah. It
yeah.
probably has that strong taste to it.
Hmm.
These are wonderful. Um, I think some folks are still my person's voice. That's a really nice one. I
Oh,
like that. That's a real calming one. Okay, thank you all so much. This is such a lovely list. I'm getting ideas as you are writing. I'm
yeah.
gonna
We
go,
also have in the chat, take deep breaths or go on I think that might be a walk,
uh-huh.
reflecting on the personality involved. Listen to my favorite song and music and caring and the puppy.
Lovely. These are so great. Thank you all so much for participating. And maybe you saw something from somebody else that inspired you. So I'm gonna go back to our presentation here and launch our Okay. So there is extensive research across positive psychology, nervous system science, organizational psychology that shows that micro moments, which are short bursts of calm, joy, connection, or rest, significantly improve well-being and reduce stress. And that these micro breaks restore energy even more effectively than long breaks when they're taken regularly. So these small practices accumulate over time and are especially effective for parents and those who are working in high stress helping professions. I kind of think of these micro moments. I have an analogy that I like to, or metaphor of an ATM machine. It's like putting money into our ATM machine so we can take that money out when we need it. So, some of the ideas, and you have all shared these on the Slido and the chat, but some ideas of micro moments are taking a short walk. A lot of us had written that. Listening to a favorite song, music seemed to be a big one with this group. Sending a gratitude text. Those always make me feel so good. Saying a no boundary statement, and we're going to talk about boundaries in a few minutes. Changing your sensory input. So that's something like, I've been sitting in this dark basement all day and I just need to be in the sunlight. So I'm going to go move my computer to sit in the sun, or I'm going to open my window, or I'm going to stand up if I've been sitting too long. So anything. And it seemed like there were a lot of some stress relieving kind of techniques that you had mentioned in the Slido. So that's very similar to this sensory input one. Watching a funny video. Some videos are just amazing online, and really can give you a good giggle. And I love this that having a joy anchor object on your desk. So I'll just be totally open and honest that my joy anchor is I have a bottle of nail polish on my desk. It's filled with sparkly rainbow colored glitter. And I don't like put it on or anything, but I just have it on my desk and I stare at it and it just makes me happy and gives me a lot of pleasure. So maybe there's some kind of joy anchor that you have that you can look at often and makes you feel really good. Um, so, what I want you to do, and what we're going to take like a minute or two to do this, is I really want you to think about the top micro restoration practices that will help you survive most over. I mean, we don't have very much long of winter, but it feels like today in New Jersey is wintry. So we're going to say for the next few weeks, I want you to create a list and actually write it down, because sometimes we can think of them off the top of our head, but the more we write it down, the more we can get more granular. And I want you to think of three micro restoration practices that are going to help you the most. And if you could and wouldn't mind jotting them down in the chat, um, we'd love to hear what is going to replenish you the most. I can't.
Okay, so we've got, I think the what gets in the way is
Oh,
really
yeah.
important.
Thanks, John.
Yeah.
I'm going to talk about that in just a minute. So thank you
Mm.
for telling me, sharing
We've
that.
got music, exercise, and reading, a spring break trip,
Nice.
flowers on my desk at home on the counter at home on the counter or reading, pickleball, knitting, audiobooks, breathing, watching TV, taking a walk, music reflection and good thoughts, taking a trip, reading, running, eating lunch. Yeah, that's one we often forget to do, right? Say no, make boundaries, make time for me, flowers for me, reading, cooking, being with my wife, or sharing, watching TV, music and exercise, muscle relaxation, a nice scent, cup of tea,
And Kathleen, I
puzzles,
just
fresh
wanted to
air.
say, yeah, one thing real quick about the muscle relaxation, because, we're talking here about like the micro restoration. I love this idea of like doing that wherever you are and at any time, because we don't necessarily, right? The point of this is that we don't necessarily need to go and book that hour and a half massage. I mean, those are really nice, but these practices are like when we build them up over time are actually more effective than those longer breaks. So that was a really nice example of a real micro restoration example.
Hmm. I've got opening my office blinds, getting enough sleep, and going out on recess with the students.
I love that. That's so fun. Okay, so someone brought up in the chat this question. If you look at the bottom right corner of your screen, these are just questions to consider. We're not going to necessarily dive into them right now, but I think we all know, right? What are the things we love to do, and like, why don't we do them? And so I want you to think about what gets in the way of fitting these practices into our daily routines. And so, just for me, it's just either I'm too busy or I don't necessarily feel that it's like okay to do the things that I need to do for myself because I'm not necessarily working hard or I'm not productive or I'm not busy. And so going to take a walk feels like a luxury. But really, what I need to do on those moments is I need to prioritize myself, right? I need to make sure that I have that time and space for myself. So I would ask for you, and what do I do in those moments? I think a lot of times I'll actually just check in with a friend or check in with my husband and say, I'm going to go for a walk. What do you think about that? And of course, everyone's going to be like, go, like have a great time. And sometimes I just need that validation. So I'd ask you, thinking about what gets in the way of fitting these practices into your daily routine, and then how can you work around those to really prioritize yourself? Um, so just some food for thought to consider. So now that we've talked about the replenish part of our framework, we're going to move into our reflection piece. So, as we all have seen in the chat, I think in the last 2 weeks, most of us have probably felt stretched thin or exhausted or emotionally drained. And we often use the same word, I'm stressed, to describe things that are actually different experiences. So, if you look on your screen and you see stress, burnout, and compassion fatigue, these can all look alike on the surface, but underneath, they're actually not the same. And the way we care for ourselves depends on knowing which one is showing up. So, I'm going to go through each one, and I want you to think about as I go through each one, where are you living right now? Are you in a stressful place? Are you just burnt out? Are you experiencing compassion fatigue? So, stress is right, this like short-term pressure or overwhelm, and is usually tied to specific tasks or situations. So, like Kathleen shared earlier with her stressor, she had this, stressor with her daughter, not getting ready for her trip. And so that was very specific to that time and that period. And usually, if it resolves, and then the stress will resolve when demand decreases. So once her daughter is able to, be a little bit more responsible or get her things together, she'll be able to feel less stressed. And so the intervention that we need for this is really that regulation piece, right? It's really like knowing what emotions are showing up, being able to breathe or meditate or relax or really kind of help ourselves get out of the state of stress. And we just need practical support. So maybe we ask a friend, or maybe we go for a walk, or just something that's, simple and practical that can really support us out of this stress. Then we come to burnout, which is really more of this chronic emotional and physical exhaustion, and it's caused by sustained stress, lack of control, or unclear expectations. So, this intervention is going to be different than stress. We don't Regulation and breathing is probably not going to work for burnout. We really need systemic and structural change. So we might think about having like protected time where, these are my office hours. And so this is time for myself where, I can't actually take students right now, or I can't see students, or maybe my schedule is too jammed up and I need to rearrange things. So how to make those really deep kind of structural and systemic changes to really support you through burnout. And then we have compassion fatigue. And I know a lot of us in this call are counselors. So I imagine this is something that we are all experiencing. I mean, I experience this, as a parent, especially, but this emotional impact from supporting others in distress. And oftentimes we can call it the cost of caring. It can feel very much like burnout, but it's actually more tied to an empathy overload. So, what we need here is a little bit different than the stress and the burnout. What we really need to think about are our emotional boundaries, which we're going to talk about in a moment, and how we can recover from feeling that sense of compassion fatigue. And so, one thing we could think about is we can think about this idea of, instead of being the perfect, the perfect social worker, the perfect counselor, the perfect parent. We can really think about the importance of repair. So instead of always trying to be perfect, how could we think about um, the importance of repairing something that goes wrong as opposed to always trying to achieve to be perfect. Another thing that could be really supportive with compassion fatigue is reducing emotional over functioning. So, are we rescuing too much? Are we absorbing our children's emotions? Are we constantly over explaining and fixing and anticipating needs? I mean, this all can create the sense of compassion fatigue. So, let's move on to our next place, which is boundaries. So now that we know the difference between stress, burnout, and compassion fatigue, the next natural question is, well, what protects us from slipping into more deeper forms of overwhelm? And one of the most powerful tools we have is boundaries, the both ones that people can see and the ones that they can't. So we have our external boundaries, and these have like observable limits. So they might be something like schedules or availability or what your physical space is like or communication rules. So some examples might be I'm not available after 4 p.m. or, 12 to 1 o'clock is my lunch break. I don't see students on my lunch break. Please knock before entering. So these are things, like boundaries that we can all see. And then we have internal boundaries. So internal boundaries are more of our emotional and mental limits. So examples of those would be like emotional detachment from children's crises, saying no without guilt, and resisting the urge to fix everything, which can just be hard. It's not easy to do these things. So an example could be something like I can support my students without absorbing their emotions. I will not push through when I feel completely depleted. And so let's talk about if boundaries are so protective, why aren't we all walking around with stronger ones? Because, for helping professionals, setting boundaries can feel sometimes emotionally complicated. And so as I read through these, I'd love to know more. Are there any other reasons why boundaries are feeling so hard? But here's some of the ones that we came up with. So we have a role stretch. Ooh, da, 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 da. So as support staff, we often wear multiple hats, and expectations can often feel unclear or ever changing. We're in a helping identity. So many of us enter the field because we care very deeply, and saying no feels like letting a child down. We're in a crisis-driven culture, so there's a constant urgency, and boundaries can sometimes feel like a luxury. Everything often feels like an emergency. There's power dynamics, so support staff often have less formal autonomy, and it's harder to advocate for needs or limits. And then we, of course, have emotional labor. So our students and oftentimes even adults and families rely on us for stability, and it's hard to shut down empathy at the end of the day. So I know we don't have very much time left, but I'm just curious for you all, are there any other reasons that boundaries are hard? I know I listed a few, but just curious to hear from you. I had one participant in one of our workshops say, I don't even know what my boundaries are, or I don't even know what my boundaries are supposed to be. And so, how could I advocate for boundaries when I don't know what they are? So someone just, sorry, yeah, you going to say,
We
Kathleen?
have some things in the chat here. I know personally sometimes I feel guilty, and that's why I'm not holding a boundary. Someone said that they feel they don't want people to dislike them or not helping enough, which I'm not sure if they feel like you're not helping enough if you hold a boundary, right? And not wanting to disappoint someone else.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
really, this external feeling is of like what other people are going to perceive of you. So thank you all. So maybe thinking a little bit about why boundaries are so hard, and maybe where what is hard for you, and maybe boundaries are really easy for you, and that's something that's really supportive and wonderful. So, kudos to you. And if not, just thinking about where you could support yourself even more. And so reflecting on all of this gives us permission really to be human and not superhuman. And when we can name and understand our boundaries, we can begin to use tiny reflective pauses to make more sustainable decisions. And so this last activity we're not really going to get to because it's 1:57. Imagine a lot of folks are on their lunch break right now, so there's going to be some drop off, which is totally okay. But what I want you to think about as we leave is this thing called a boundary map. And if you're able to just kind of think about it quickly now, or if maybe you want to take this exercise and do it later, it's really, really helpful. And I want you to think about four things. What drains me? What restores me? What boundaries support sustainability? And what boundaries feel possible to try in the next week? I'm going to give a very small example of one of my a situation with my 9-year-old son who has me doing everything for him in the morning, packing his backpack, doing his lunch, helping him put on like it's endless and it's very draining to me. And what restores me is being able to have my own time and space in the morning where I can drink my coffee and really think about my day. I actually also don't think it's good for him that I'm doing all these things for him. And so, what boundaries support sustainability? He needs to be doing more of his own things, and he needs to know that, and I need to know that, and needs to be very clear. And so, something I've tried in the past week is just getting him to get his everything in his backpack ready, a small boundary, but it has felt really, really, really good to establish. So just picking something small and really thinking about what boundaries you can help yourself with. So if in the next 2 minutes you're okay to enter something into the chat that you're going to take away with you, we would love to know. But again, this is a lot of meaty work, not that much time. So apologies for for just kind of getting it a little late here. So again, just this reflection part of what's one boundary you might experiment with in the next few weeks. If you're open to putting it in the chat, we would love to hear. If not, that's okay, just holding it close to you. Um, Kathleen,
I did say,
yeah,
I
go
did
ahead.
say, yeah. Oh, you can see the chat. I
Yep.
did say, this is something I used to do with my kids when it came to projects. Like, I'm happy to help you get all those materials for your project, but I will not do it the night before. I need to know at least 2 days before. Like, that's a boundary that I used to hold that I'm going to have to start holding around this packing thing.
Yeah. And someone just mentioned in the chat, just saying, I don't have time for that right now, I think is a wonderful boundary statement. And I love that because it can just be repeated over and over and over again, right? I don't actually have time for that right now. It's not being offensive. It's not being, anything. It's just saying, I just don't have time for that. So thank you so much for sharing. And we have one more sharing with your 2-year-old grandson. I'm so glad this works both in a professional area and also personal. So we want to end here today, letting you know that we have so much appreciated being here with you today. Our contact info is both on the Padlet in this presentation, which will be sent to you. And if you want to copy it down right here, we'd love to hear from you if there's anything you want to share. And thank you for all you do. And thank you so much for being here with us. And there's lots of
Thank
other
you.
wonderful presentations. So, please stay tuned. I'll be doing one tomorrow. I don't even remember what time, 12 or 1 o'clock, but
One o'clock, Erica.
okay,
We know
thanks,
when you're
Liz.
doing.
Please
And
stay. Sorry, Liz, do you want to take over now?
sure, thank you
Thank
so
you,
much. That
everyone.
was great. And we will be posting these onto our website. And also, one of the webinars tomorrow, Eric is doing one on student agency and student empowerment. And Patrick Fennell, who some of you may know, he's a wonderful presenter. We'll be talking about SEL skills and their applicability to the workforce and how to develop those skills intentionally in school and throughout, a student's life in school. So we're really looking forward to hopefully seeing many of you again later on this week, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. And thank you again for joining in. So have a wonderful day. And thank you again to Kathleen and Erica. This is just great. I've
Our
heard this 2 or
pleasure.
3 times. I always take so many good tips away. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks so much, everyone.
Have a good SEL week.
Yes.
Yes, happy SEL week.